Hi guys, welcome back to Two Worlds Collide podcast. On today's episode, we have the Honourable Bob Katter. We dive into everything about Australia, what's not working, and what we need to do to get the country back on track. I hope you guys enjoy. Did you hear about that? Did you see my reel I did yesterday, Ben?
Which one?
Man, I did this reel where I have a talent agency. Yeah, I have a talent agency that represents me. And, just for modelling and a little bit of acting here and there. And they wrote me an email yesterday saying, because of your political views and political commentating, we have to cancel our agreement together and they can no longer represent me. How's that?
I would like to write a letter and say there are laws in this country. We have freedom of speech.
Can I just work your mic quickly?
Yeah.
Go now.
I would like your permission to write a letter to those people and say, inherent in every aspect of our democracy and the laws in this country and the rule of law in any country is freedom of speech. And when you get punished for having a point of view, then you have breached that time-honoured conviction which so many people throughout the centuries have died for. Freedom of speech. So we would direct that you write another letter to Sam and withdraw your letters. Or I will have to recommend you to a number of instrumentalities that are responsible for enforcing freedom of speech. Can I have your permission to write that letter?
Yeah, I guess you can. Yeah.
Ben,
Yep.
You're working this week. My office, will you ensure that letter goes out this week and we send Sam a copy of it? You'll have to get off Sam before we leave here, who I write that letter to.
I'll let you know. Let you know.
But I'm not just BSing there. I would argue in a court of law. I don't flash it around, but as in final year law at the toughest law school in Australia, 72% dropout rate.
You were.
To which I made my contribution to the dropout rate. And I was in final year. It's pretty weird to do 6 years law and then leave without a degree. One of the smarter things I've ever done in my life. Not that I had any say in it, but still. Hey, Sam, I'm in your hands.
Thanks, mate. Well, look, Bob Katter, thanks for coming on Two Worlds Collide podcast. Appreciate you making the trip down to Adelaide. And I'm a massive fan of you and your work, and there's also a little bit of Northern Queenslander in me. We spoke about before.
Yeah.
I had a bit of
Townsville.
I lived a bit of my time in Townsville.
Fortress City. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 battalions up there now. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3, and they're all infantry units. So, mate, it was really, really funny going out there because you'd either run into blokes from your unit or you would run into blokes from other units and you'd have to fight them because that was the rule. So, but luckily I spent most of my time when I was in Townsville up in Afghanistan in 2012. But
Sam, you've got to understand, a lot of them wear uniforms. They're not real soldiers. I mean, there's infantry and there's others, but they're not real soldiers, the others, You would understand that.
That's right. They're all pogues. If you've ever heard army terminology, that they're pogues, and we used to call them, they're people other than grunts because we were grunts. So
I must remember that. But we say, no, that's very nice. You bring ammunition and food up and supplies up to us. Yeah,
they fold the blankets.
You play a part.
That's
you fold their blankets. Yeah. You play a part. Not a real part, but you play a part.
Yeah, mate. It's we're living in such a, and we spoke about this before off air, such a changing dynamic of Australia, and I think you mentioned this, and I mention it all the time in my reels, that I feel like we're losing a bit of our identity as Australia. And, we're talking about stuff like immigration before, and there's a housing crisis, and, we're in bucket loads of debt. Cost of living is so high. What's probably, first of all, because you've been in politics for
50 years.
50
I've been
years.
a member of Parliament 50 years, longer than anyone else in Australian history at the end of this year.
Are you seeing a rapidly changing Australia from when you first started?
Every day of my life, Sam, and I'm a published historian, You know, to get a book published is very, very hard. And to get a book published in history is infinitely harder, but I'm a published historian. So I'd like to think I know a little bit about it. Having said that, I every day of my life ask myself, what went wrong? What happened? The assumption is, of course, that we're now in free fall. We're not approaching the cliff. We've gone over the cliff, and the car's plunging down now into the abyss. And how young people, couples, can make ends meet, well, they can't. They can't. And, you know, a lot of them say, Cleo of all magazines, not that I read Cleo, of course, but they did, a centrepiece for 5 editions on why women in Australia don't have babies. And, you know, it was like 30 or 40% of them said, oh, no, we want to have babies, but we're just waiting till we're settled, you know, got a bit of money and a house and that sort of thing. Well, by the time settled comes along, if it ever comes along, they're in their 40s and it's too late. But the Cleo articles were very good articles, and they had statistical back. But, you know, I mean, let's just start with we're a vanishing race. When 20 Australians die, they're only replaced by 15 people. So we as a race of people are vanishing off the face of the earth. There cannot be a more definitive statement upon a race of people than they just vanish out of the gene pool. And that is what is happening here. We're one of the 13 countries with the lowest birth rates in the world. What is wrong that you don't love kids and want to have kids? There is something very sick here. They want careers. Yeah, well, the only career is the race careering off into non-existence. It's the only careering that's being done here. So, you know, we have launched, and I have 2 of the best PR people in Australia. 7 years ago, I could go and have lunch in a cafe, and no one would have any idea who I was, even in North Queensland, arguably. Now, I was at a cafe in, a pub, a big disco pub in Brisbane, and 21 people wanted their photographs taken with me. Now, that is because I have 2 absolutely unbelievably excellent PR people.
They're really good with social media.
And one of them won the advertising prize for Australia, so it's not just my opinion that they're good. But if you can make me popular, you're very good.
Well, I think you make yourself popular, to be honest.
That'd be a challenge. From where I sit, after being in Parliament for 50 years, and I sort of been at both ends of the spectrum. You know, sitting in the back row as an obscure backbencher in Canberra, and having been the person running Queensland when Joe, they stabbed him in the back, the BASTDs. So we, of course, returned the favour. Whilst we're doing all this, election is getting closer and closer. Or we're having fun killing each other. And we got retaliated and got rid of them, but it was right on the eve of the election. And we only narrowly lost that election, but at that stage, I was the sort of titular leader of the Jockey-Peterson faction. And we, at that stage, destroyed our opponents, payback time. And so I was running the show, and so I had a unique vantage point to know how you run a government. And we were a government that governed. Believe me, we governed. You know, we weren't there to be show ponies.
Yeah.
We were there to govern. And sometimes with brutality. And sometimes it requires brutality too.
You have to, right?
Right. But when Jockey-Peterson was elected Premier of Queensland, we were a coal importing country. Now, within 17 years, we became the biggest coal exporting state on earth. And the Australian economy was being carried by coal. But when he's elected, we're a coal importing country.
Yeah.
Now, those are the people that I worked under and with and promoted and fought for. They were, we sing a national anthem, Advance Australia Fair. Well, I mean, of course, there's a number of books out saying Advance Australia where. But unfortunately, we can answer that question. We know exactly where we're going. But we only have 3 sources of income now. Keating destroyed the wool industry, which was our biggest export, was bigger than coal, and he completely single-handedly destroyed it. Congratulations, Paul, that's a marvellous
How did he do that?
achievement. And all wool was sold through a corporation which had a levy, and every magazine in the world, and I remember picking up a French magazine and 2 full pages in the top fashion magazine in France, 2 full pages were advertising wool and the wool mark. If you wanted to dress up market, and in my day, you got a suit, you checked out whether it was wool because you didn't want to be seen wearing it.
Yeah.
Because it was just lower class rubbish, and unless it was pure wool. And that was a magnificent marketing exercise. Also, there was a single person just rang them up and they sent you the wool. It was very efficient as well. There's only wool apparel produced by Uruguay and by Australia. The Americans own Uruguay, so they were quite happy to bludge on us.
Yeah.
So it was 6,000 million and coal was 5,900 million. And you're dead right in saying 92, 93, because that hammer blow fell with Keating in 1992. And everything went bad in Australia. I shoot back to 1992, which is a little tiny bit unfair to Keating because it really started with Whitlam. And how did I get into politics? I was out there making $1 squillion, just purchased 500,000 acres with a mate of mine. We had no money on it, and we split it up, so I had 250,000. I own 24-inch rainfall area. It's pretty good rainfall area. So I was having fun, making $1 squillion. But Whitlam just changed my life forever. That bastard, I hated him, and I could see clearly where he was going. He was going to destroy my country. And I wasn't Robinson Crusoe. There were 16 blokes who went into that state election that had never been to a political meeting in my life. I had been, but they asked me to stand down from the local executive of the country party because I really wasn't very interested. And but I suddenly became real interested when Whitlam got in. But he wasn't there very long. It was really staccato stay, and it was very brief. I looked at Blue Poles, the painting, and she paid, I think, $54 million for. No one in Australia could understand how you could pay that for someone that's threw paint cans of paint all over a canvas, and then he charged you $54 million for it or whatever it was. But I loved that painting. That painting. Anyway, but when Keating got in, he implemented those policies. His great hero was Gough Whitlam, and he implemented those policies. And when Costello got in, he continued on Keating's policies. And they're free market policies, but I always use the analogy, and I don't want to talk too much, but I just want to say this. I always use the analogy of the gladiator going into the ring, and we Australians, we say, "Oh, no, mate, just give me a helmet and your shield." He said, "Well, the other bloke's got a helmet and a shield." "Oh, yeah, but it'll make you tough fighting without a helmet and a shield." And the gladiator says, "No, it won't. It'll make me dead." That's what. And that is exactly what happened to the wool industry. You took away our ability to defend ourselves and to be able to fight competitively with other products, fibre products. You took away our right to defend ourselves and be able to aggressively fight for our product. You took it away. So we were destroyed.
It even seems what's sort of happening now, which you just explained, right? Like we're getting our tools taken away from us and manufacturing shipped over to China because we can't use our own natural resources in our country, like burning coal and gas, right? It seems like the analogy that you almost just brought up is the current situation that we're in now. Manufacturing is moving over to China, and we ship all our coal and gas over to China, and it's very hypocritical from a government to say that we can use it, or they can use it over there and we're allowed to ship it, but we can't use it here because it's bad for the environment. And when you can't use coal and gas, I mean, try powering mega factories on green renewable energy. You just can't do it. So do you see something similar happening right now?
Well, I mean, let me be very specific. China is currently building 200 giant coal-fired power stations. They use that energy to make solar panels to send to dumb countries that are going to save the planet. You know, like 26 million people are going to save the planet. I mean, do you realise how stupid that sounds apart from anything else?
Don't get me started.
The stupidity of it. You know, I mean, we've only got three sources of income: coal, iron ore and gas. We gave the gas away for 6 cents. And we're now reaping the whirlwind. The third biggest industrial centre in Australia. Number one is Newcastle, the biggest coal port in the world. It's owned by China, by the way.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
And number two is Gladstone, aluminium, and a giant coal port as well. Number three is Mount Isa, and Mount Isa is closing down as we talk. The energy, the electricity comes from gas, which is a very expensive way of getting it, but our gas is $16.60. The Americans and the Russians, who compete against us in fertiliser, they're buying their gas for $6 and we're paying $16.60. So needless to say, the giant fertiliser plant in Australia is closing down. Now, the little tiny ray of sunshine is Western Australia does not believe in free markets. So they have a reserved resource policy, so they can get the gas for competitive prices, $6. So they're building a giant fertiliser plant on the East Coast. We're closing our fertiliser plant down. But don't believe that one ray of sunshine is the dawning of a new day. That's not happening. So let me go back. The big three are over 120 billion. That's gas, iron ore, coal. Gas was given away for nothing. It's gone, right? Too bad. So sad. Quick figure. Qatar exports the same amount of gas as Australia. The last time I looked, they were getting 29,000 million a year for their gas. We were getting 600 million for our gas. But that's about 15 years old. That divergence has widened dramatically. So those figures are much worse now. So we gave the gas away, forget about it, it's gone, right? The other two were coal and iron ore. I can't speak for New South Wales, but I can for Queensland, which is the biggest coal producer, bigger than New South Wales. And the coal industry is closing down. Now, the new Liberal government said, oh no, we're not going to abolish coal. By 2034, we're abolishing that legislation, which they did. Right? But they left in the coal tax. And it is nearly double the charges on coal in New South Wales.
Yeah, right.
And New South Wales one of the highest, but by far and away the highest taxation and charges on coal anywhere in the world is Queensland. So they don't have to do anything, and I'm sure that the Premier told his backbench would be a bunch of wokies in the Liberal Party. He said, oh, no, we don't want to make a big thing of it, but, you know, the tax, marginal mines will close, existing mines will be worked out, and no new mines will open under this tax. So coal is being closed down. Be comfortable about that, Mr. Backbench, you know, and tell the public that we believe in coal because we hold all the coal seats in North Queensland. We've got to appear to be pro-coal.
Mate, and this is this issue at the moment, right? And you referenced before that China are building coal-powered plants.
200.
200. I think they're doing a couple every fortnight or something
That'd
like
be
that.
right. That'd be right.
And they are just smashing them out. And our energy bills seem like they're just going nothing but up and through the roof. And it's been since this green energy push in about, 2021, 2022. And I always think to myself, we don't not share the same atmosphere as China. What they admit is what we admit, right? So why is our government happy to push our coal and gas overseas, but we can't use it here ourselves because it's bad for the environment? I mean, we don't live on Mars, right? And I've always thought to myself, because no one else seems to be really going green. They say they're going green with this net zero fantasy that they lie about, but no one seems to be going green around the world. I mean, emissions, if you looked at the charts that I look at, they're at all-time highs. China has just skyrocketed. India is right behind them. And the US, under Donald Trump, they've just thrown away this net zero fantasy altogether. But Australia seems to be caught in this whirlwind of greenism, and it's weird.
I mean, it really is weird. And it's interesting. The only 3 countries that free market, they all agreed to free market in agriculture, but no one did it. But the only 3 countries that did, and they abolished all support levels, were Australia, New Zealand and Canada. And that's one of the reasons why I get savage about our coins having a British monarch upon them. I'm anything but anti-British. I'd probably be described as very pro-British in the old British I'm referring to. But just jumping back on the issue of free markets, there are only 3 countries that actually reduced, and they virtually abolished, particularly New Zealand and Australia. Australia abolished all support levels to agriculture. But everyone said they were going to do it, but no one did it, except those 3 countries. And you've got to say the colonial spock marks are showing here. Those British colonies.
Definitely.
And they obviously haven't grown up, those 3 countries. They feel they've got to say, oh, look, we're good boys, we're the teacher's pet, we do the right thing, well, no one else feels that they've got to grovel to the latest fashion ideology that comes along, and that's what it is. It's just you've been in politics like over 50 years. They have all these fashion ideologies. We had overpopulation. We haven't got that problem anymore.
No.
China's below replacement, for example, and most of the Western countries, not America, but most of the other Western countries, are European, all of them are below replacement levels. So, I mean, there's a fashion ideology, fashion statement. Oh, the world's going to starve to death, we won't be able to produce enough food, and starving millions everywhere. And now we've got an abundance of food that is driving down food prices through the bloody floor, and farmers going... Anyway, you got the picture, Sam. But, I've always had a mistrust of ideology. I remember a meeting vividly, and I was, going on with, this should be the basis of our belief system. And an old grizzled up old cocky got up the back, old cattleman, and he said, the saying about, when your neighbour starts preaching religion. I said, yeah, you reach for your branding iron. And he said, when your politician starts speaking bloody ideology, he said, mate, reach for your shooting iron. I thought that was a good call. That was a good call.
Oh, that's brilliant.
When your politician starts speaking ideology, reach for your shooting iron.
Well, that's and this seems to be the issue at the moment. There seems to be all this ideology pushed down onto us, and especially over the last few years. And look, I'm quoting Jacinta Allen here, Premier of Victoria. She came out the other day because there was all this stuff about what they're teaching kids in Victorian schools, right? Where they're telling them that there's 52 genders and all this stuff. And she came out with a stat and said, trans kids are 15 times more likely to commit suicide. And I thought to myself, well, if we don't push this ideology onto them, and just let kids be kids, won't they be 15 times less likely to commit suicide? And this is what you're just repeating there. Like, when politicians come down with ideologies, it just seems to me, it just seems to be doing us nonsense and no good.
Sam, when I was writing a mystery book, I said, if nothing else, we've still got our sense of humour. They decided to have these license plates, on your car with a motto on it, and so they started off with New South Wales Premier State, and all the wags put apostrophe S on it because the Premier had given the railway station in the centre of Sydney to his good mate Peter Abels. Mm-hmm. And then he was thrown out of office and the Liberal Premier came in and he gave what was left of the railway station to Peter Abels. And they both got a story in Peter Abels' giant building in the centre of Sydney, in return for their, patriotic efforts. It's so patriotic with a large degree of cynicism, so when they put Premier State on the licence, all the wags put apostrophe S, Premiers, Premier State, and in Queensland, the clever state, and they'd write underneath it, dumb government. Smart state, dumb government. And Victoria, state on the move, and they'd write underneath it, to Queensland.
Well, everyone's on the move at the moment to Queensland. No one wants to live in Melbourne.
Well, but poor little Tasmania, they wrote the natural state. Well, everyone wrote unnatural state.
South Australia is with the city of churches.
Well, I didn't have a quote in my book for no disrespect to South Australia, but there'd be no wags come up with anything there. Although there would be a certain irony of South Australia being the city of churches. Anyway, forget about that. But there is no doubt that we've gone over the precipice and now we're in free fall. And, to me, it's so easy to pull it back. And I know because I've done these things. 2 Australians came in to see me when I was Mines Minister in Queensland. There was a top portfolio in Queensland, so I was the most powerful person in the cabinet. And Bill Gunn was the acting Premier. Old Joe was going to Canberra and he was out of the show. And so you and I were running the show. But 2 Australians came in and says, you're going to take these mining leases off us and give it to the Japanese? Yep. You've got till Friday week. You wouldn't be game. Oh, you try me. You try me. Unless you announce that you're moving into mining by Friday week, then yes, they will be taken off you. You wouldn't be game to the public. I'm putting a press release out about it. There it is. Have a look at it, Stick it up your nose.
Show it in your hand.
You've got 2 weeks, Friday week, to announce. I am not interested, quite frankly, whether it's Australian owned or Japanese owned. I want the 950 jobs because they will be Australians. And I want those highly paid jobs created for my people. And I don't like foreign ownership, but I will override that principle unless, of course, I was betting that they'd back off, which, of course, they did. Friday week, but that first Friday they agreed to start mining. But the point I'm making is we ruled, we governed. I made the decisions. That would be unthinkable that could happen today under the Liberal government in Queensland or a Labor government in Queensland. It's just unthinkable. It couldn't happen. You've got Mount Isa closing. And does he say to Mount Isa, just close down the mine and then sit on the resource? You close the mine down, I'm taking the resource off, you give it to somebody else, as I did in the case of Emerald in Queensland with that coal mine. that was always the law in Queensland. Use it or lose it. And it doesn't exist as a law anymore. The foreign corporations run the show, and if they decide that they just want to sit on it and not work it, that's what they do. And that's what's happened in Mount Isa. Oh, we're just going to own the copper, but we're not going to work it. So no jobs for you. Nice little parcel of copper that I can trade internationally.
Isn't that sad that we've got here as a country where, you know, everything seems to be foreign owned, shipped off, all the jobs are shipped off, and then, you know, we're having stuff like a cost of living crisis when, you know, we could just be firing things back up here, bringing jobs back home.
The biggest import item by far and away is petrol and diesel. It's 45 billion. I think the next thing down is about 15 billion. So it's right up here, and there's nothing comes second. You know.
Yeah.
We import $45 billion worth of fuel from overseas. In 1992, that year that you mentioned right at the start of this, and it's really funny. You can really date everything back to that. In 1992, we were 72% self-sufficient in oil. You filled up the Bowser, 72% of what you filled up with was Australian, produced here in Australia. We have 30% of our oil needs are in reserves in Australia, so they can produce 30%. But because we're one of the biggest sugar exporting nations in the world, and more importantly, one of the biggest grain exporting nations on earth, we're beautifully set up to do ethanol. Brazil, I'd say, is on about 65% ethanol now. Last time I looked, it was 49%, but going up. It's much cheaper than petrol and infinitely cleaner. We have about 1,000 people die from smog, exhaust fumes from your motor vehicles. In Sydney, Melbourne, to a lesser extent Brisbane, 1,000 people die every year. When Emma introduced ethanol, he said, I cannot go another day with people's deaths on my conscience, people that just don't have to die. Two biggest cities on earth, Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, are the two cleanest cities on earth, because they're 60% ethanol. And it's cheaper. They're filling up for $1.09, and we're filling up for $1.80 last time I looked. It's cheaper, cleaner. Why aren't you doing it? But no, you choose to send $45,000 million a year. I mean, the whole budget of South Australia would be $45,000 million. We send it overseas every year to buy fuel, and we've only got 2 weeks' supply. That means if there's a strike at the wharves, we're in real trouble. If there's a hiccup in Singapore, we're in real trouble. If the Middle East, heaven forbid, they don't play up, do they? The Middle East plays up, we're in real trouble. If China decides to get nasty, they just sent a fleet of warships around Australia. I felt like
they don't mind doing a lap around Australia.
Roadkill on the side of the road, watching the kite hawks circle. You know, was the feeling I had. Can I just switch for a moment on to defence?
Yeah, go for it.
We have 3 battalions, and you know, in military history, they don't refer to battalions really at all. It's divisions. Well, we don't have anything near a division in Australia, so we don't even have a division. But we have 3 battalions, and there might be 4 or 5, but I think there's 3, but I think there might be 4 or 5, but whatever. But, I mean, they spent $40,000 million, and I felt just like leaning across the table and smacking the head of the armed forces in the mouth, but I was a bit scared because, you know, intermingling of blood, and you could get...
I think you'll be able to hold yourself.
Yes, but, you know, it's not that... you know, you get those diseases.
Yeah.
You know, I won't go into much detail, but you got to be careful about intermingling blood. And he definitely was, you know, a little bit limp-wristed, you know. And but he spent $40,000 million buying 12 patrol boats And the total armaments on each boat was a machine gun. Machine gun? My platoon, I was a sergeant, I was a platoon commander. My platoon of 32 men, we had 23 machine guns. We did not cost the taxpayers, $40 billion.
Yeah.
But he spent all that money to buy 15 machine guns. I mean, he should be put in jail and the keys thrown away. But he's head of the Armed Forces for Australia. He said they're not allowed to use the word kill.
What?
You're training a soldier and he uses instructions that you're not allowed to use the word kill. Well, we took bayonet practice in my day, you know, I mean, no one's going to be charging with a bayonet now day and age. So what's all that about? Is to teach a person to kill without thinking. You know what I mean? You can't have him thinking, oh, should I shoot him or not? You know, and warfare, that's just not available to you. But here's the head of the Armed Forces issuing. So that's the issue of the Armed Forces. I tripped and almost broke my leg trying to get down to Jackie Lambie, and he's been Russell. He's made a lot of good news on veterans and that. Anyway, Heston Russell and Jackie Lambie were doing a thing because, you know, every time a person got the Victoria Cross or some similar, some little pansy would race off and say, hey, they were involved in an atrocity. Well, like they shot an enemy, that's an atrocity. And whilst I exaggerate somewhat, I think it's a truism to say that every time a person gets lauded for being a hero in the field of battle, we spit upon him in Australia. Every little pansy that wants to race forward and say, oh, he wasn't really a hero. We listen to them and then spit upon our great heroes. It's hard to think of anything sadder than that a country has so much lost its way. You know, I sit under a thing on the wall, you know, if you have one of your family lost in battle, they give you a little frame picture, certificate. And Christian Porter was in line to be Prime Minister of Australia, my second cousin. But we had, our forebears, two of those things on the wall, because they lost their lives fighting for their country. But now, you're spat upon if you sort of fight for your country. Now, it's not the Australian people. It's a little band of people that control or articulate or dominate the media. And it's those sort of people. And the values of Australia are slowly sinking into the mud. So I down here to talk to Rebecca Sharkey, and I said, no, we have the gum tree movement, and you're going to, under the gum tree, the great Huey Long in America, most popular politician in American history. Huey gave his famous address under this romantic tree in America where a famous poem was written. Well, we're going to do the same thing here. So she said, well, we're going to turn around to Australia. You did your schooling in England, Rebecca, and you didn't have the privilege of reading my history book. But if you did, you would know that Red Ted Theodore had a 5th grade education and a bicycle, and he was a town called Chillago, which is in the middle of nowhere, about 150k, due west of Cairns, right in the middle of nowhere, on the outskirts of civilization. And he had a bicycle. This is 1905 or thereabouts, and sent down a mine for the 3rd time in his life where they were going to die, and some did die, so they were sent down the mine. So that's it. We form a union from now on. You don't tell us whether we go down the mine or not. We'll tell you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, where are we going with this? Because you either join the union, and in a lot of history books, they will tell the story of Theodore, that you could take a union ticket or you could take a bashing. There was no in between.
Sounds like Melbourne.
Yeah, it was pretty a good approach. But so they all joined the AWU. Where are we going this, Ted? Oh, we're going to form a political wing. We're called Labor Party, and we're going to take over Queensland and then Australia. Ted, you're on a bicycle in Chillago. There's no phones or anything in those days. You're going to do, yeah, that's what we're going to do, yeah. Well, within 12 years, he'd taken over Queensland, and within 19 years, he'd taken over Australia.
So that's how the Labor Party grew.
That's the story of the Labor Party, and it centred upon one person, Red Ted Theodore. And in those days, they were the good guys. Outside of Brisbane, the Labor Party won every single seat in every single election for 48 years straight.
Wow.
Then the Labor Party splits in two, and half of them go into this little bunch of bushwhacker troglodytes, hayseeds. It's called a country party, about 10 dairy farmers, you know. I don't think any of them had much education. But there was nowhere else for them to go, so half the Labor Party ends up in the country party. And then they rule Queensland for the next 48 years.
Yeah.
Winning almost every seat outside Southeast Corner. But going back to, saying to Rebecca Sharkey, and she said, why me? Well, you told me who else, right? I'm a sort of personality out there, and, it's just not the right image where we want to go here. If you knock it back, Di Lee's the other obvious one, Di's a flaming patriot. The inauguration of Parliament.
Yeah.
And she was wearing a flat dress that's made out of the Australian flag. She died. You don't think it's a bit over the fence?
Yeah.
No, I don't actually. She said, but she can do it too. But I think Rebecca probably is the best choice for that. And there'll be Andrew G and Di and a couple others, and roundabout. We'll just simply make a statement that you've had your fun now, and we Australians are standing up and taking our country back. It's the Gumtree movement. I don't know, they might find a better name than that. But,
Yeah. See how the PR team go.
Yeah. But mate, to me, it's very easy to turn it around. And I came out of a government, as I say, we were a coal importing nation, and then we became the biggest coal exporting state on earth. And the Australian economy is carried by coal for the next 40 years. So it's very easy to turn around. You just give a permit to mine the Galilee Basin. Half Queensland's coal is in the Galilee, and they won't allow any coal to be worked from the Galilee. Indian company got a little tiny permit, but it's nothing much. But we can double our production if we open up the Galilee. So there you go. There's $16 billion straight off, one hit, the Galilee.
And then all the jobs as well that will come from that.
Well, 10 jobs for every $1 million, so you can work out how many jobs that will create. Secondly is the Bradfield scheme. Dr. Bradfield built the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Story Bridge in Brisbane, and most of the water supply in New South Sydney came from Bradfield. But he had this dream of putting a canal from Adelaide up to filling Lake Eyre with seawater.
That's a Lake Eyre one, and then to enrich the middle of Australia and put a population around
It'll make it rain in the middle of Australia.
I have read this theory.
That's called the Bradfield scheme. The other way was to take water from where we come from, Ben and I come from, where it rains all the bloody time. 100-inch rainfall in Tully and in its far. We've been to, so a little tiny bit of that water up really high, and it's got enough height then to get it back out, fill Lake Eyre that way. But the revised Bradfield scheme says you fill Lake Eyre with the giant canal, and it opens up Adelaide and South Australia, because you can get all your minerals and cattle or wool or everything out on water, which is so cheap. What made America was they built those canals. What made China was they built those canals. What made France was they built those canals. But, we haven't built a single kilometre of canal in Australia. Not a single kilometre of canal.
And obviously, 98% of our population lives on the coastline, right? All around Australia. No one can live in the middle because it is just such a vast desert. So I have read this theory. It's really, really interesting, and they floated it years ago, right? As to, flood it from either northern Queensland or South Australia. And Lake Eyre is just a mammoth old salt lake in the middle of South Australia. To flood that, and then you can actually, with flooding that, will bring more rainfall down, and it'll make the entire area very accessible and easable, and you could almost build cities and towns all around that area, which is now just dry.
But wouldn't it be beautiful to have a big, huge mansion on that lake, and you jump into the lake and you float? You float. It's so heavy with salt and that you actually float. But wouldn't that be wonderful? And you're a couple of hours drive from Adelaide, but that's not huge these days.
Yeah, but you can still open up. The amount of business you could bring there, because obviously people brings business, but they could be small cities along there.
Your production of salt, because that lake is a salt lake now. It's just salt. That's all that's there. There's no water. But the production of salt there, just by itself, would be a huge industry. And I won't go into the details of it, why and how. But you build a port at Lake Eyre, and that's what you're doing. You build a port right in the centre of Australia. I mean, it just changes the whole nature of this country. And the sad part about it is 92% of our population, if you draw a line from starting just above Cairns, about 100, 120 kilometres, 130 kilometres wide, just come down around to Adelaide. There's no one living. The rest of it, 92% of Australia is under 1 million people. And that less than 1 million people is reducing. My homeland, when Keating destroyed the wool industry, my homeland shrunk by from 14,000 to 9,000. And then the ALP government sold the railways. I mean, Red Ted Theodore would turn in his grave. There was a Labor Party that sold the railways. It's anathema to everything the Labor Party was founded for. But they sold the railways, and now all the railways carry in Queensland is minerals and coal. That doesn't carry anything else. So the cost of carrying everything by road transport, it increased the cost of transport 600%.
Wow!
From railways to road, to road transport, and of course you're destroying the roads as well, and the railway lines there not being used. But it's of the nature of politics today. Don't look for logic. Look for the fashion ideology of the moment.
And that's what's drowning us. In my opinion, that's what's silently killing Australia.
Overpopulation was the fashion ideology.
When was that?
The world's starving. That was in the 80s, 70s. Sort of hit its straps in the 80s. And then it became, we're all going to die from carbon dioxide.
Acid rain, global warming, global boiling, this sort of stuff.
Right. So that's the latest fashion ideology. And we're moving into a new phase now. Free market, of course, was the other fashion ideology I left out there. And all these things have been disastrous. And that old cocky, when your politicians start spruiking ideology, reach for your shooting iron, he had that dead right. If your decisions are not based in reality and a thought process, I mean, unlike other people, I have actually read the Deputy President, Al Gore's book, Inconvenient Truth.
Yep.
And it's actually, believe it or not, a good book, right? Its facts are fabulously good. It's, conclusions are absolutely bloody disastrous. But if you take the last chapter out, it's a bloody good book. Yeah, I mean, you know, there has been an explosion in CO2 and you know, it's increasing at an increasing rate. And I've always said, look, increasing doesn't worry me. Increasing at an increasing rate, yeah, I'm inclined to say this. In the 70s I was saying this. Mm-hmm. And I put the first standalone solar system in Australia. And I can tell you that putting a standalone solar system, particularly if it tracks, I got rolled on the tracking by Cabinet, but in a remote location is really smart and a good thing to do, right? Mm. To put it on your roof in Adelaide or Townsville is an act of complete madness. I'll give you one fact. I say to people, you know, how often do you clean your windscreen on your car? Oh, they say a couple of times a week, I suppose. Yeah, right. Mm. How many times do you clean your solar panel? Mm. Why do I have to clean the solar panel? Think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yep.
Think about it. You clean your windscreen twice a week. The solar panel's
people don't get
than
to
your
them for
windscreen.
years.
You know, what are you going to climb up on your roof and clean the bloody? But that's only one aspect of it. I mean, the economics are quite ridiculous. And you don't have to be Albert Einstein to figure that out. I mean, it's very complex. It's not glass. It's glass doped with bromide and another number of other very rare chemicals. And it's not a simple process and it's not a cheap process. Mm. Albo's great, you know, venture into productivity is we're going to build solar panels in Australia. Albo, please do your homework.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is the most sophisticated technology on Earth. I mean, really, as far as I can make out, there's only the Germans, the Chinese, the Americans and the Brazilians that are producing the bloody thing.
And you also need to burn coal and gas to be able to produce it. So if they're against burning coal and gas, renewables ain't going to charge your station to be able to build these solar panels. That's just a fact.
You can't smelt without coal.
It's 100%.
Right. I mean, you can use wood, you know, your charcoal. Yeah, you can move electricity, but where are you going to get the electricity from?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly right.
Right. So you're dead right. But you know, the way back, you know, I think if we stand up, and I came down here, and you know, Rebecca's a very quiet person, and really, I think that's better than having a loud person make the statement. Mm. But you know, I think that Di Lee will probably stand behind you, and Andrew G and maybe one or two others standing behind you. But that's not the point. Even if you're doing it by yourself, you know, the gum trees are growing. We're going to stand up, and we're growing.
Well, there seems to be growing sentiment out there, and this is probably why a lot of people know who I am at the moment, right? Because I've been talking about a lot of these things and a lot of these issues, and I can feel the frustration in the Australian people that it feels like we're getting put last, right? Australian-born people, doesn't matter what colour you are, it seems like you're being put last over, you know, imported immigrants at the moment as well. Like you mentioned before, our birth rate, we're currently at 1.5. To sustain a population, you need 2.1. I don't know, you know, where we've sort of moved away from having big families younger, but we have, right? And this might be the rise of social media and stuff like that. We've, you know, moved away to people having kids earlier, and now they have kids later and they have smaller families. So what do we have to do? We have to sort of import the difference. You know, Hungary's doing a brilliant thing now where they're incentivizing young families below 30 to have kids and have multiple kids. And there's a big incentive program around that. And yeah, I'm just personally, the Australia that I grew up in, the Australian that I fought for in 2012, I see it rapidly changing. And we had some numbers come out the other day. Ben Fordham, the radio host in Sydney, released some numbers. They're saying like 1,500 immigrants rolling in a day. And that's over 500,000 a year. And you keep that up for years and years, and we've got millions of immigrants roll in. And with that, I see like a bit of a loss in identity. I just don't know where we're going with, you know, with this mass immigration flood. Well, I think the government's broken to change that as productivity.
I won't hesitate to say to you that in the last 12 years, 92% of people came to Australia, went to Sydney and Melbourne. There's no jobs from there. I mean, all industries closed down and gone long ago. I mean, the underwear bonds went overseas, taking 5,000 jobs with them when they left Sydney and Brisbane. To quote one small example. So what are you going to do about it? Well, income splitting, obviously. And we talk about the sinks and the dinks. The sinks,
I've heard this.
Single income,
I want to hear it.
no kids.
Yeah.
You know,
Show me. Yeah,
single
I wanna hear
income,
this.
no kids.
Yeah.
You're both on average weekly earnings, 100 grand. You pay 25,000 in tax. Disposable income, $75,000. So each sink has a disposable income of 75,000, right? Dinks, I'm sorry, that's the dinks, double income, no kids.
Yeah.
The sinks, a single income, number of kids,
Yeah.
let's say 3, right? So there's 5. So now your income of 100,000 is split 5 ways. So your income's 15,000. So the question becomes, do you want a disposable income of 75,000? Or do you want a disposable income of 15,000? Now, is this fair? I mean, is this fair that two self-indulgent, selfish people, and I use that word without apology, right? They want to live together and never have the responsibility of having kids and see any responsibility towards their country. They get a free kick, $75,000 a year each, and the poor old sinks, they get $15,000 a year. Is that fair? Is that fair? So income splitting needs to be introduced immediately. Income splitting. So your tax is on 5 incomes of 15,000. So you're paying virtually no tax. And of course, someone's got to pay some more tax. Oh, well, what about, the dinks?
So
what about them paying a bit more?
So your plan would incentivise families to have kids, and then they'd pay less tax.
Absolutely.
And if you didn't have kids, say you're double income, no kids, they would pay more tax. I mean, that's a good plan to help the birth rate get up, right?
My 2 brilliant PR people, and I don't think anyone would question, the publicity we get out of all proportion to me. But they, and as I say, one of them won the advertising prize for Australia. And but they both have 4 kids, both families, and they're pretty aggressive about it. But also $30,000 per child per year. You say, where are you going to get that money from? Well, that's easy. You just say you can now mine coal on the Galilee.
Bang.
Doubling Queensland's coal production.
Bang.
You just say I'm building Bradfield. Now, is this bloke an idiot? Oh, he built the Sydney Harbour Bridge. He built the Story Bridge in Brisbane.
Seems a pretty switched on guy.
Provided most of the water supply to Sydney. He built the University of Queensland, Sandstone University. The underground railway system, which won the World Prize for Engineering in the year in which it was completed. Not exactly a fool.
Yeah.
Not exactly. One of the electorates in Australia is Bradfield. I mean, if you could make it rain in Central Australia, if you had a great canal leading into the centre of Australia and coming out at the Port of Adelaide, wouldn't that be marvellous? And the second string to it is all that beautiful black soil, 1,000 kilometres of black soil, and my homeland, rolling flat black soil, rich soils on earth, and to put a little tiny bit, you'd never be able to do much of it, but a little tiny bit of it, maybe 2 or 3%. So you fly over it and you see little threads of green everywhere. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And create 5,000 farms, opportunities for young people to go and own their own farm and have an income of maybe $500,000-600,000 a year net income. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's so easy to do. But as one member of Parliament said to me, I'll go along with you on every water scheme so long as it doesn't involve putting a square metre under the plough. What a terrible thing to say. You must feel hypocritical when you sing the national anthem.
Yeah.
Advance Australia.
100%.
You must feel pretty hypocritical.
Well, this Advanced Australia, I feel like it needs to be turned around to whatever the opposite is to advance.
Retreat Australia.
Yeah, Retreat Australia. I just feel like we're in this, and the natural resource, we get laughed at around the world for the use of our natural resources. Countries laugh at us. You hear experts come along. You hear Tucker Carlson talk on this sort of stuff. We have the greatest natural resources in the world, practically on par with the UAE and stuff like this. And yeah, countries laugh at us for not using it.
I just decided that I'm going to write another very small book on Australia. I had a history book, but it was a moderate bestseller, if I may say so. But I just started writing it, and I said, when the Chinese had that flotilla of warships sail around Australia, I felt like I was a road accident victim on the side of the road, and I was watching the kite hawks circle around, the birds of carrion. It always amazes me as a published historian that we Australians don't understand that we are a European country right on the edge of Asia, isolated from Europe by 5,000 kilometres. And I think that would stick in the gullet of most Asian people. And the fact that we're the richest and most pampered people on earth, and I say that without hesitation, because where can you afford, and this is probably less true today than it was 8 or 9 years ago, where can you afford to take up a 10-acre block and have birds twittering in your backyard and the kids throwing a football around, and where else can you do that and have an income as high, if not higher, than most people on earth? Where else can you do that? So I consider, and I would argue this in a public arena, that we're the richest and most pampered people on earth. But our neighbouring countries in Asia do not enjoy that wealth. They're not pampered, and they're not Europeans. Now, that would lead me to believe that we're lotus eaters living in lotus land. We all know what's going to happen here sooner or later. Read your history books. And von Clausewitz, probably the best book ever written on warfare, and it's called On Warfare. A people without land will look for a land without people. Read Mein Kampf. Read Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. Mind you, it's the ravings of a lunatic, but all the same. The word Lebensraum is on every page. Lebensraum is the same in German as it is in English. Living room. Russia has space, we have population. Exactly what von Clausewitz said in On Warfare. Now, you whistle and I'll point as to who's got the land and who's got the population. People without land will look for a land without people. And if you doubt my terror tactics, then a flotilla of warships from China just circled your country, thumbing their noses at us. I don't know, they may have been given a map by Moneypenny Wrong. I don't know, she might have given a map. It might be unfair to her. She is a good example of the depths to which Australia has fallen. That she could be the most powerful influence in the Labor Party outside of the Prime Minister himself, or maybe even more than the Prime Minister.
You're talking about Penny Wong?
No, Penniless Wrong. No, I got half penny wrong. That incident with that Christian lady, being in her own words, bullied and having a heart attack. Pretty hard to find precedent for that anywhere in Australian history. If that lady has the interests of Australia at heart, then I am a wing wong for a Japanese bridal. Oh yeah. But that she could be in a position of power. The founders of the great labour movement, people like Ted Theodore, they would turn in their grave if they thought that that great entity that did so much for Australia has come to this, and it has. I mean, she's running the show because the Prime Minister is busy meeting the Pope. That's rather interesting because she's the first Prime Minister to refuse to swear on the Bible.
Yeah, I remember watching that.
Yeah, first Prime Minister ever in Australian history to refuse to swear on the Bible, and now he's running around holding hands with the Pope. Well, of course, he can't hold hands with Trump because Trump won't meet with him. Well, I don't think. I think that people will disagree with me, but I think that Kevin Rudd did a couple of very good things for Australia. What are your comments about the President of the United States? And he's the ambassador. His ambassador means friendship, public relations.
Yeah, that wasn't very smart, was it?
I thought that's most extraordinary. Anyway, but look, I hope and pray we'll be able to raise enough money to get the balance of power in the Queensland Parliament. And we'll use that power to immediately open up the Galilee and to start building the Bradfield scheme. We're landlocked in far north Queensland. Great Dividing Range comes right into the coast.
Yeah.
Cairns is actually built on the Great Dividing Range, so it has the sea on one side of Cairns and mountains 3,000 foot high.
Yeah, I was recently there a few months ago.
Well,
Love it. Yeah.
Story. But we can't get out. We need a tunnel. It's only a kilometre, the tunnel. But, tyranny of the majority, de Tocqueville, the great founder of democracy, and the American Constitution was based on the work of the Frenchman de Tocqueville. But his final book was The Tyranny of the Majority. And that's what you see in Australia, with the capital cities having all the votes, all the power. And outside the capital cities, nothing. But that is particularly true in Queensland, where some imbecile put the capital city right on the northern New South Wales border. I mean, I live 3,500. Ben over there lives 3,500 kilometres from Brisbane, and there's 500,000 of us live. Sorry, what am I saying? 1 million of us live 3,500 kilometres from our seat of government. Needless to say, Brisbane gets 36 kilometres of tunnels for leisure and pleasure, and we get no tunnels at all.
Yeah.
They get 60 billion for the Olympic Games. I just want to go sideways on that, Sam. Could I, in the Olympic Games?
Go for it.
Right.
Go for it.
One of the beautiful things being in Parliament is you get to ask questions. And Milton Dick, for reasons unbeknown to me, seems to have taken a somewhat positive attitude towards me, which is pretty rare among speakers. And question to the Treasurer, Mr. Speaker. Treasurer, is it right that you're going to take billions of dollars off the Australian people and give it to an organisation where they run around in a circle and whoever comes first, they give them a prize? And that organisation had the attention of the world upon its opening ceremony, and they used the attention of the world to humiliate, spit upon and denigrate Christianity. And some sort of pagan-like ritual which any self-respecting undergraduate would be ashamed to be associated with, the infantile nature of what happened. Now, is that the organisation that you're going to take billions of dollars off the Australian people and give it to that organisation? He said, yes, sat down. Oh, no, Mr. Speaker. No. He's not answering a question. And Milton did come down on my side. Yes. Don't forget, he's quite right and proper. That is not an answer to the question, and the Treasurer will answer the question. So the poor beggar, not that I felt sorry, he's looking up at the sky and looking down at the, they love picking on Christians. They don't like being identified as anti-Christian. And all the Liberals are looking at the ground, and all the Labor Party's looking at the ground, and I'm sitting there like the cat to swallow the canary, and Milton's actually enjoying it as well. Milton didn't get to speak on. He's a closet Christian or something, but he was quite enjoying the humiliation of the... but they'll still do it, they'll take billions of dollars off us. What for? It doesn't create one single job. You build a tunnel in Cairns, you open up the most diverse mineral field on earth. That's not my saying. You read any minerals book and it will say that the most diverse mineral province on earth is in far North Queensland. Well, we can't get to it. We've got no way of getting out. The Gulf is just a floodplain. You can't get ships out through the Gulf, Carpentaria. And we can't get to Cairns. We can get out through Townsville, but that's like a 2,000 kilometre round trip to get the stuff out through Townsville. It's just not going to happen. So for the sake of a tunnel, we open up this huge... Now, the other thing is I represent half of Australia's rainfall runoff. The biggest river in Australia is the Mitchell River, which is in the Kennedy Electorate. The second biggest river is the Murray-Darling, which covers 5 states of Australia. That's not in the Kennedy Electorate. The third biggest river is the Burdekin River, which is in the Kennedy Electorate. Now, there is a dam, but it's right at the mouth of the river, so it doesn't really do much. One dam right at the mouth of the river. Well, you've got no land you can irrigate much. Do we use any of that water? No. So in a world where 1,000 million people go to bed starving every night, we're sitting on this magical resource and not using a single drop of it. A little tiny dam at Mareeba and the dam right at the mouth of the Burdekin River, and that's it. We're effectively not using any of that water at all. And as Dr. Bradfield said, inland Australia, the dry heart, the broken heart of Australia, will be described as Girawina, land of flowers.
Well, they reckon that plan could absolutely flood that area with greenery.
So, and it's funny, I'm here in Adelaide, but, so who are the great beneficiaries? Adelaide and South Australia, because, the canal goes up. You build a canal and it just explodes. And I refer to China. China was bloody nothing until they built that giant canal and another canal too. France was just another European state until Louis XIV, the Sun King, built all those canals. You could go on water from the English Channel to the Mediterranean by the time we'd finished without touching land. So canals, America would have been nothing like what it is today if they hadn't built those canals right back. Chicago's right in the middle of America, and you can go by sea from Chicago.
I read somewhere that the Taliban are building canals in Afghanistan. That's what I read, that they're even doing it.
I would never say anything nice about those people.
But I'm just saying, even them, a war-torn country that are now run by the Taliban, even they're building canals.
Can I say something to you, Sam? You've been on this migration thing. I ask people, probably 100 people a week, I would say, so if you're the boss of Australia, what's the first 3 things you do? And in the last 8 months, it's changed. Every single person almost says migration. They want to stop. Now, these are housewives shopping in the supermarket, right? There's a bloke's steel cap boots working in the mines, right? There's sugarcane farmers, there's cattle blokes, all sorts of people ask the question. Now migration is up there. And you're one of the few people in Australia hitting the nail right on the head. But if you were to say to me, what's the first thing that should happen? Stop migration. Stop migration now.
That's my top two things that I would do if I was in power for a day. We stop migration. But you have to have a plan to...
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, like, you can stop migration, but you have to have a plan to fix the birth rate. And I've got a plan to fix the birth rate, but it's very similar to
Sam,
yours.
What's your plan to fix the birth rate?
So my plan to fix the birth rate is we have to incentivise young families, young Australians to have kids. That is...
How do we do that?
That's simple. So Hungary have...
Ever since the Phoenicians invented money, you reckon this was
That's right. But to fix so everyone can scream about immigration, but we need to have a ploy to fix the birth rate. Now, to fix the birth rate, I would adopt what Hungary are doing right now. So the Hungarian government is putting like 5% of their GDP into incentivising young families to have kids. So if you're under the age of 30 and you marry, you get a big fat check from the government. Maybe it's like 200 grand or 250 grand, 300 grand, something like that. And for each kid you have, 25% of that loan that's given, that's get taken off. So if you have 4 kids, bang, 250 grand given to you by the government. Now, also as well, what they've done is there is, for the female, the mum, if she wants to go back to work after the kids are grown up, each kid they have, she gets taken 25% off her income tax for the rest of her life. So if she wants to go back to work after those kids are up and running and raised, she never has to pay income tax again. So, you know, like everyone screams, we need to stop immigration. And I completely agree. We need to halt it now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more.
We need to stop it now.
Stop all migration now. Press a restart button somewhere in the future.
Yeah, it needs to be a pause of 3 to 5 years whilst we get housing and everything like that under control. But again, the birth rate's the big issue, because if we do that and we stay at a birth rate of 1.5, our population will dwindle into nothing because we're not having enough kids. So we need to work out a way to incentivise young families to have kids. And I think the Hungarian, they've been running it for a couple of years, their model.
Are they getting results?
Their birth rate has upticked a bit, but this has been since the start of COVID. So better projections will be seen over the next couple of years. It'd be interesting, though, to see how they go.
Well, I mean, we're advocating 30,000 a year per child, you know, in the hands, tax-free. So if you have 3 kids, you know, 100 grand a year, you know, and tax-free.
Is that every year you get them?
Every year,
wow.
Every single year,
yep.
Right? And you know, and I just tell our little party people, and Ben, our president's here with us today. I say, never say that you're going to spend money on something unless you tell them where you're going to get the money from. Well, it's very easy in our case. I'm just saying, Bill Bradfield, and open up the Galilee, right? There you go. It's best part of $100 billion a year. That is a huge amount of money. I mean, we only have 3 export items now, and each of them is about 120 billion. Well, this 2 items will earn you 100 billion a year in export earnings. You know, there's a few add-ons, but I won't bore you with the detail. So that's where you get the money from, and that's how you spend it. But I've got to say to you, Sam, France, you know, huge money, you know, but they didn't get any results out of it, which is worrying me, you know, that even if you do this, will you get the results? And, you know, there has to be a reorientation of our values. One of the senior officers in the armed forces, I said, what would you do if you're the boss of Australia? What's the first 3 things? He said, first thing is to change the attitude of the Australian people. I thought that was a good call. That's a very profound call. That was a good call. I mean, you know, if people think it's more important to have a career, my generation, you know, and I was at university, I left without a degree, wisely. It was a decision by the university, more than myself. I didn't forget about it. My generation, you know, they were career women, you know, hell-bent on having a career. well, they're old, burnt out hags, their beauty's gone, their tiger in their tank's gone. Their careers have careered off into obscurity. And it's very sad. They sit at home with a cat or a dog or something watching television. They get no one to love and no one to love them. And I feel life cheated them. Society cheated them. The value system cheated them. My wife's hiding out from the grandkids all get climbing up towards 20, I think.
Yeah.
But it's so exciting to have the kids running around and what they're up to, and all of the emergencies and exigencies. But that value system needs to be changed. And I'm coming down here to talk to you. And I also came down here to speak to Rebecca. And it's funny, she said, well, who am I to take that position? But that's the point, Rebecca. I just tried desperately to just be an ordinary Australian, And it's interesting, I'm very proud of this. I shouldn't be, but I am. My family have been very powerful, very prominent for over 100 years. My great-grandfather died the richest man in Queensland. And remember, Charterstown was bigger than Brisbane then. And we're northern-based. But, we've never had anything named after us, and every endeavour to name anything after us, we stopped it. So we have had a principle through 4-5 generations, having nothing named after us. And that's the way it should be. It really should be like that. Now, there's an exception to the rule. The bridge going to the airport in Cloncurry, it's named after Carl Katter Bridge, my grandfather. Yeah. But what happened there was they tried for 12 years to get the bridge replaced, and the government wouldn't replace it. It was falling to pieces. And Grandad was a teetotaler, actually, but for this night he was not a teetotaler, flying drunk, and wiped out the bridge. And everyone was cheering, clapping. So they named the bridge after him. And we went along with that one. So,
let that one slide.
Yeah, we let that one slide. But I just, every time I think about it, I think it's so funny. And, grandfather was such a, respectable figure. But this night he wasn't. Sam, migration has got to be stopped now. There's nearly 500,000 people have come in from the Middle East. And, a lot of people might use the word Islam. I don't, because I have a lot to do with Indonesia. And quite frankly, I find them some of the most Christian people I've ever met, even though they ascribe to a different religion. But their religion is totally different. And that Middle Eastern area, since 720 AD, there's been violent wars taking place there the whole time. There are 4 wars going on right now as we speak. I'm sorry, but if you're going to bring people in this country, you ask 5 questions. Do they come from a democracy? No. Do they have rule of law? No. Do they come from a Christian country? Like, you've got a responsibility to your fellow man. And the Sikhs, for example, their religion's almost identical to Christianity. So I'm just saying Christianity in the sense that you have a responsibility to your fellow man. Right? Do they have industrial awards? No. Do they have egalitarian traditions? No. What the hell are you allowing them to come? They're never going to become Australians. And quite frankly, my experience with them is they hate Australians. And they will never become Australians. And they live in little ethnic enclaves. 92% of the people, migrants that have come to Australia, and when you say migrants, don't concentrate on migration. There's more coming in sneakily through the student visas. And I had a conversation. They were very nice people, actually. I said, what visa did you come in on? She said, student visas. They're easy to get anyway. Anyone can get a student visa. Yeah, but you've got your whole family here. It's five family, and they're a lovely family too. And they work very hard. They had a good business in the town, they're good people. But she said, oh, if you get a student visa, you bring a family in.
Yeah, right.
Now, I mean, it's just an open door.
Yeah.
Anyone could get it any time they like.
Wow.
And they never get sent home. I asked a question in the Parliament, how many did you send home since there's nearly 500,000 coming in each year? How many have you sent home? And the Prime Minister mumbled and fumbled and then immediately launched the federal police onto overstays, because none of them ever go home, see.
Mm-hmm.
When he did that, he was called a racist, and they vilified him in the press, and he incredibly stupidly said he was going to reintroduce knighthoods, and he's going to give Prince Charlie or Prince Billy or whatever his name is a knighthood. And, I'd like to have seen Peter Cridland's face when he came out with that one.
But that's the problem of the world that we're sitting in now. And just before we sort of wrap up, but that's the world we're sitting in now, right? If you speak up against this stuff, I get called all the time racist, bigot, and all these words which they try to attack you with. They try to drown your morals, and they try to hit you in the guilt side of things. But it's like, well, no, we need to be very careful about where we're bringing people in from. Very careful. And to repeat your words of just, they need to align with our values, and they need to also, when they get here, they need to fit in, or as Big Chocky would say, they need to F off.
Yeah. But the giant following, Sam, that you have and Chocky have, would indicate that the Australian people want to hear this. And I don't know anything about the internet. I'm illiterate because during the Fitzgerald inquiry, the bad coppers, they'd murdered 41 people, been responsible for 41 murders. The Fitzgerald inquiry became an absolute farce. It was Spanish Inquisition upon the Jockey Peterson government. That's how it ended up, And, the corrupt government. Well, hold on a minute. There was not a single person convicted, not one, convicted of corruption, right? So don't say that, because I was a member of that government. I can sue you for defamation. So if I hear you saying it again, I will sue you, because no one was convicted of corruption. And I won't go into the details of that. But to give you the witch hunt, and I remember Wayne Goss, who later on became Premier himself, I said, Wayne, this is a bushfire raging, and it won't stop. You blokes will win this election, but it won't stop with us. You'll get burnt. And I said, it's like a Salem witch burning. He said, no, more like a Jesuitical inquisition. Well, there's a nice little piece of religious persecution involved here. Nice little touch of sectarianism went into it, and I won't bore you with the details. And it's pretty ugly, really. But we had a situation which arose very quickly, where there were 42 deaths attributable to a corrupt group of police, a very small corrupt group. But Fitzgerald and I have nothing but contempt for the man. Everyone knew who was running it. And the 41 murders attributable to police force, suicides or murders. And the person running it, he never went near him. And he lives in a house in Hedges Avenue at Broadbeach on the sea at the Gold Coast, in the heart of the Gold Coast. What are we talking about? Maybe $8 million, maybe $10 million for the house. Top of the range Mercedes-Benz. And all of this on a sergeant's take-home pay of $80,000. A very courageous journalist interviewed him. But there are 4 books out about him, But Fitzgerald never went near him. And I just can't say there's any other explanation for that except cowardice. He can defend himself, but as far as I'm concerned. And in the meantime, he succeeded in putting Brian Austin in jail because he'd misused his government property. He had taken his government car and driven up to see his kids at boarding school on the weekend in a government car. Everyone in Australia's got a government car. We'll use it for private purposes. But so, you know, but that fire did, I was dead right. Poor old Gossie got burnt, you know, the ALP got in and that fire then went against him, you know, and he got brain tumour, which is very stress-related, you know, cancer of the brain, and the poor beggar, you know, was really bad. But I was dead right, you know. Once the fire starts, you won't put it out.
That's right.
You know, Spanish Inquisition, Salem witch burning, you know, once it starts. Yeah. But look, you know, before I leave, and we will leave on this note, you know, my vision for Australia is best summed up by Stan Costa. Slim Dusty at his funeral, about 2,000 people at his funeral, said Stan Costa was the greatest wordsmith in the English language. And I suppose that's an Australian viewpoint. But this is one of his songs. I was in the bar talking to this returned serviceman, and he said, this is what he said to me. And he said, you know what, I'm going to go home and I'm going to write that into a song. And this is what he wrote in the song. I wonder if the ghosts of the fallen can see the crime and corruption and vast poverty, a lost generation, adrift on the dole, adrift on lysations without any goals. I once had a dream of my country so grand, where the rivers out back irrigated the land with the dams and canals in that wasteland out there, and big inland cities with work everywhere. Then I woke from dreaming to reality. Australia's wealth, it goes over the sea. God bless you, Stan. God bless you. He wrote a beautiful hymn, God Will Prevail. Yeah, I agree with Slim Dusty. He's a great wordsmith in the English language.
Sounds like it.
Stan Costa, yeah.
That was, I mean, those last lines hit pretty hard, right? Sending everything overseas. I just feel like we're in this at the moment, but you know, through people like yourself, and then through other politicians out there that are starting to speak up in the Australian public now, right? The Australian public is starting to speak up because we're seeing what's happening. Hence why my page and that is starting to go up a bit. So.
Sam, I'll go on all day, but I said I was going to conclude, but I just want to add one thing, right? In 1992, see, everything started in 1992.
You keep referring to that.
In 1992, there was a 60-40 rule, and I had a conversation with Kevin Rudd. This was after he's out as Prime Minister, but Albanese owed everything to Kevin, and I thought, you know, he'd give something back. Well, he didn't, but forget about that. But I said, you know, we never made the important decisions. Banks made the important decisions, not us. And Rudd said, looked at me quizzically. I said, I know what you think. I know exactly what you're thinking. Superannuation, yes. Superannuation's got the money now, not the banks. Then he said, it's in my book. I read your book, and that's in the second book. So you're advocating we go back to the 60-40 rule. In 1992, 60% of all superannuation had to go into government securities. So it should. I wanted some guarantee there'll be some money there when I retire. Now there's no guarantee. And what are the issues? 51% of your money that goes into your superannuation is spent buying and selling shares backwards and forwards to each other. A giant Ponzi scheme. And Rudd said, John Maynard Keynes called it a roulette wheel. Well, whether it's a roulette wheel or a Ponzi scheme, I don't care. But I don't want my superannuation. Well, that's where it's going. So, you know, but 60% of went into government security. Now nothing's going into government securities. Nothing's going into any security at all. Just a giant Ponzi scheme. And 51% is going into buying and sell shares to each other. 49% of that is going overseas.
Of course it is.
Now, there's an advertisement. One of them's got an advertisement. Oh, we've bought railways in Switzerland. I mean, what the hell would you know about railways in Switzerland?
Yeah.
And they're squatting about it. So that's how bad this is. And the people really that make the decisions in this country are the slithering sharks, share market sharks of Sydney. and they are the worst possible type of people. They've never produced anything of value for the Australian people. But that superannuation money, even if you took 3% of it, therein lies the money to do that development work. So if you say, where are you going to get the money from? Oh, mate, that's no problem at all.
Yeah.
And I'm not even advocating going back to the 60-40 rule. I would like to advocate it, but I'm not even going back. Let's just say 2%, so I point out to you, if you give me the money, I build that tunnel and open up that massive mineral field. The Northwest Mineral Province producing about $2.5 billion a year. Well, that'll be $2.5 billion, but it opens up the water as well. Half Australia's water is tucked in behind Cairns, and we can't get at it because of the Great Dividing Range once again. But you untap those two giant resources, Dr. Bradfield, you build that canal up and fill Lake Eyre with water. And Wilson Tuckey, of all people, Wilson advocated that. He's from Western Australia and I'm from North Queensland. And yet we're advocating that you build that canal up. It was about 6,000 million, Wilson said, to do the excavations. That's over 10 years, maybe 6, 7 years. So it's hardly a line item in a budget. It's so small. And yet the benefits are so great to be able to get out of the interior of Australia product super cheap. That's just... And, for Adelaide, well, you haven't got much going for you down here. You're tucked away in a bad spot. Suddenly you become the centre of the earth.
Well, mate, I actually, I've read that 1,000 times, and it's very interesting. And I, if anyone's listening to this, just Google the Bradford theory with flooding Australia or Lake Eyre through dams from South Australia and Queensland. It's very interesting. But mate, Bob Katter, thank you very much for coming on to Worlds Collide podcast, and mate, I'm looking forward to staying connected in the future.
Keep up the good work, Sam, and may Jesus' blessings be upon you.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for tuning in to Two Worlds Collide podcast. If you want to support what I'm doing, you can grab some merch or jump on my Patreon program. Both links are in the description. Until next week, take care, guys.